Okay, welcome to my presentation. We are looking at the complicated impacts of George Steinbrenner. My name is Carson Zant. So let's get started. So, who was George Steinbrenner? The biggest thing you need to know, he was the owner of the Yankees from 1973 into his death in 2010. Um, like many other owners of professional sports franchises, he was born into money. Um, and he was the managing owner until 2007. He had some health problems, so he stepped back. And then his sons, Hank and Hal, they took over at that time. While he was the owner, he was a very controversial figure, had some scandals, um, but he also did quite a bit of good. He started the Gold and Silver Shield Foundation, where they basically help families of first responders who died in the line of duty. So he does, or he doesn't anymore because he's dead, but um, they still run that foundation, the Steinbrenner family. They help people in the Tampa area and the New York City area. So they help those families. They've helped over like 1,000 kids get through college. So they've done some real good during his time, so from 73 to 2010, no baseball franchise has won more World Series titles than the Yankees during this span. He was very hands-on owner, which is very uncommon. There's not very many. I mean, the big one is Jerry Jones. He's that way, but they don't win, so it doesn't really matter. But the Yankees won quite a bit. And I mean, they have the most championships out of any team ever. So there's a lot of debate on whether or not his leadership style actually worked because a lot of people were angry, didn't like working for him, things like that. So his one of his biggest impacts, so there's two of them that we'll talk about. The first one is that he politicized baseball. So he donated a lot of money to politicians from both parties. Technically, him and his wife donated. Hopefully, you can hear the tone of my voice there. Um, but this chart over here on the left side of the screen, um, basically just shows all of his donations to Republicans, or not Republicans, to political candidates. It's Republican and Democrat. So he wasn't loyal to one party. Um, Essentially, he donated to the politicians that had economic policies that helped business. I mean, that's the simplest way to put it. Um, So you see the right there in the middle of the table, there's the Major League Baseball Commissioner's Office. They typically hire federal lobbyists to just kind of protect the interest of baseball in Washington. Um, this is not really common at all, but he hired federal lobbyists three times during his time as the managing owner. Um, in 2000, just in 2004, they spent 580 grand on federal lobbyists in Washington to protect the interest of the Yankees. So however you want to spin that in your mind, you can. And overall, so he really the first one he hired was in 2001, I believe, or 2002, I believe. So from 2002 to 2006, I think they spent 720 grand over that time period. So he spent a lot of money on politics and to politicians and to get, Washington to kind of sway his way in terms of making money and in his mind making the Yankees great. So, as mentioned, he used his donation power and connections um, to get what he wanted done. So he did that to build a new stadium. We learned in class that it is not uncommon for owners to kind of get a really owner-friendly deal when building a new stadium. So while while Rudy Giuliani was the mayor of New York City, him and Steinbrenner were buddies. Steinbrenner also donated to his election campaign. Um, they got the talks going of building the new Yankee Stadium shown here on the screen. They got rid of the short porch in right field, which is unfortunate. Um, but they got it initially going, and then when Michael Bloomberg came in as the mayor, they finished the deal. It was met with a bunch of scrutiny. Yeah, I mean, people called it corporate welfare. As we learned in class, it's based off of subsidies, so that makes the financing a lot cheaper. Um, they also pay zero property taxes, so there's like several million dollars lost in public funding in just tax dollars that could go to building new parks, fixing roads, things of that nature. Um, so they built the new stadium across the street from the old one, and to do that, they had to bulldoze a city park in the Bronx, which is one of the poorest boroughs in New York City. That was not that was not well. That was that was not great. The citizens of the Bronx did not like that, to say the least. They kind of viewed it as this billionaire coming in, getting a playground, and they're getting screwed by not having a family park to bring their kids out to, walk their dog at, things of that nature. And again, like the Bronx is one of the poor boroughs of New York City, and when I mean the tickets at Yankee Stadium are ridiculously high, so many people can't get into them. I'm not saying all people in the Bronx are poor, um, but that's just the reality of it. A lot of them couldn't get a seat in the Yankee Stadium that's built in their neighborhood. So similar to how Bloomberg addressed the public when he built the Barclays Center, he said, this is going to create thousands of construction jobs, and then after that, it's going to, give everybody some permanent jobs. A lot of those permanent jobs are part-time, no benefits, so they're typically the second job someone is working, and then the construction jobs are temporary, so that doesn't really help anybody long term. He also promised a financial boost to the business owners around the neighborhood. Which didn't ever really pan out because the shops and the restaurants in Yankee Stadium are fancier. They have better stuff in them. And so the small business owners around the Bronx didn't really get the economic boost they had hoped for. Um, so the stadium technically didn't increase taxes directly. However, so this stadium opened in 2009, but it started getting built in like 2004, 2002, somewhere in there, which is right after 9/11. So I believe Bloomberg increased the tax rate by like 18% right after 9/11, just to help with the rebuilding. And then there are some other things and reasons why he increased taxes, and so people viewed that as that was part of Yankee Stadium, which it wasn't. But it didn't really matter what it is; it matters how it was received. So people did not like how the city and Steinbrenner went after building this new stadium, and it took them years to build back that city park. So it wasn't like, oh, this thing opens 2009, bulldoze the old stadium, build a park. It was several years later before there was actually a functioning park across the street from the new Yankee Stadium. So one of Steinbrenner's quotes is "breathing first, winning second." That was something he was very popular for. So all he cared about winning was winning baseball games. Allegedly, it's not really just about winning baseball games. It's about lowering the bottom line, increasing profit, and that's a win in his eyes. And I think it would be in a lot of our eyes too, as long as it didn't screw over the working class and the people that go to the games. So his other biggest impact, um, he basically got the ball rolling and created a spending disparity in the MLB. So free agency was reduced or introduced in 72. The first ever free agent was Catfish Hunter, signed to a 5-year, $3.5 million contract. I believe that was in 74 or 73. So that was a massive contract at the time. Um, During his tenure, they signed over 100 free agents, totaling almost $2 billion, which is a lot of freaking money. Um, and just in the 70s, just right after free agency came out, they won three AL titles and then two World Series, kind of right off the bat. So it kind of showed other owners that this is a way to win. You don't just have to develop players and hope that you pick the right guys. So, as mentioned, some teams followed suit, others decided development was the key to winning. The caveat to that is that bigger teams and bigger markets have more money. That's still true today. Um, but pre-free agency, really in the 50s and 60s, the Yankees weren't that great. I mean, they were awesome during the Ruth and Gehrig days, the DiMaggio days, the Mantle Maris days. They had been kind of stale for a while. Free agency came, they made a bunch of deals, they got people. Um, but a lot of the smaller teams, so if you haven't seen Moneyball, I would check it out if I were you. But that's based on the 2011 Oakland Athletics. They basically would develop players, get them really good, get a high dollar, dollar sign beside them, and then trade them off, get more, plug and play guys, um, and kind of a rinse and repeat deal. And they were really good in the early 2010s and in the late 2000s. So a lot of people, uh, operate in that way today. So this chart on the right side, this is basically his biggest free agent signings during his years as the managing owner. So there's a lot of names on here that are Hall of Famers. There's a lot that are multiple time All Stars. There's also some that were didn't really work out. So Roger Clemens on there, he was a trade, but he ended up getting extended, so I decided to include it there anyway. Um, But some baseball commentators, they'll focus on the Hall of Famers, say that Steinbrenner's spending was justified. Others will look at the worst player, the guys that didn't the busts, you could say, and just call it irrational and irresponsible spending. So there's kind of a mixture view on how he went about getting players. But it's hard to argue with sustained winning. I mean, while he was the managing owner, they won 6 World Series. From 94 to '06, they won 4 World Series, 11 AL East titles, and 6 AL pennants. And that was on the backs of a mixture of free agents, trade acquisitions, and then players that were brought up in the Yankee system, like Jeter, Rivera, Posada, um, some of those guys that were key pieces in those teams. So, kind of who's to blame for that, for the spending disparity? It's really the MLB, because they didn't implement, so that there's no salary cap in the MLB, so it's kind of the MLB's fault for not rolling that out there in the '70s. Um, but with that, bigger markets can spend big, smaller markets must rely on draft picks and their farm system and their coaches. Um, so that's just kind of the way it is. In today's game, the payroll disparity is big, like big. The Dodgers have a payroll of $331 million. That's opening day payroll, so it's not when they trade somebody off and sign a guy with a bigger contract. And with them, they have a bunch of guys where their contracts are deferred out several years, so they're not, Shohei Ohtani's making $2 million on the field this year. Now in 2035, he's going to make $96 million. So that's not the true number technically, or I guess it is the true number, but it's not. It doesn't tell the whole story. And the Miami Marlins, who are at the bottom of the league, they have a payroll of 67 million. Um, so there's a massive difference in payroll, even today. And this may be good news. I don't know. Currently, there's negotiations of a possible salary cap. Um, but like the Shohei and Yamamoto contracts and Juan Soto contracts, it's going to be a logistical nightmare to implement that soon, just because a lot of those contracts are deferred out for so many years. Um, so, but hindsight's 2020. The MLB is really the true blame on how this works. So, by that logic, it sounds like more spending is more championships. Kind of. I mean, the past 25 World Series winners, three of the past 25 World Series winners were in the bottom half of payroll. The rest were in the top half. 14 of those World Series winners were in the top 10 in opening day payroll. And during that time, so from 2000 to 2024, the last World Series, the Red Sox have won the most titles with four, and they were top five in the payroll each year that they won the championship. So it seems as though spending money wins, especially if you're in that top half for sure, and then even into the top 10, you typically get you pretty far, especially if your guys stay healthy. So his legacy, there's some good, there's some bad, there's some ugly. So the good, like I mentioned earlier, the charities that he does, the winning, the bad, awful to work for. Players didn't want to speak out because they were afraid of getting cut. In an E60 interview that I watched, he tries to instill discipline. Um, I don't know many grown men that have played thousands of baseball games that need more discipline. But apparently, me and Steinbrenner didn't apparently don't apparently see eye to eye on that one. Um, but he was banned from baseball twice. One in '74, for making illegal contributions to Richard Nixon's reelection campaign. Possible involvement in Watergate. If you don't know what Watergate was, Nixon basically sent some guys into the National Democratic Committee headquarters, tried to wiretap some phones. That's not exactly bueno. Um, but he ended up getting pardoned. Steinbrenner did by Ronald Reagan in the 80s. The other time he tried to blackmail Dave Winfield. He had signed Dave to this massive contract. It was the biggest in sports history ever. Um, and in his contract, they had signed that the Yankees would donate $300,000 to his foundation, to Winfield's foundation, and they didn't. And Steinbrenner didn't want to pay it. So he hired a gambler for 40 grand to get information to blackmail him. So that wasn't good either. When they heard about that, Fay Vincent, the MLB commissioner at the time, banned him for life. He was reinstated like 3 years later by Bud Selig. Um, so there's that. Um, but yeah, and another part of the ugly, he politicized the MLB, but not in like a good activism sort of way, not actually fighting for issues, but for, trying to increase profit through politics and policies. So with all of that being said, it seems like winning cures all because I don't think, there are very much mixed reviews. But it's hard to argue with his way of leading and the way he did things with how many championships they won during his time. So his legacy really isn't black or white. It's like multiple shades of gray. He had a love-hate relationship, with his players, the Yankee fans, the other owners of the Yankee group that bought the Yankees from CBS. A lot of those guys didn't like him either, and I don't think other owners of other teams liked him either. Um, so very controversial guy, but does winning cure all? It kind of seems like it, but it's kind of up to you and how you view this guy. Um, but that is my slideshow.